So I have the marvelous Mark here, Mark Lerman, Coach Mark or Coach Lerman. And I'm just going to change my slide here. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my first conversation with Mark and what excited me about having this webinar with him. So Mark saw an interview with me sometime between Christmas and New Year's, and he called me, which was, a plus in my book that you would pick up the phone and call me. And we had a marvelous conversation. I'm going to say that we talked for about 40 minutes. Does that sound right to you, Mark?
It does, yes.
And he was telling me a bit about what he does and talking about confidence. And I ended up admitting that in terms of my physical abilities, I lack a lot of confidence. And I don't know where that comes from. It doesn't matter. But it certainly prevented me from learning how to drive a car until I was 55. Most of you know that story, or a lot of you do. But anyway, I was expressing this to him and he said, well, when you're doing something and maybe you're thinking to yourself, this time I'm going to do it perfectly, that's future thinking. And that's what can get in your way of doing your best in the moment you're in. I was like, wow, that's amazing. So just that little phrase has helped me with numerous things that I do. And so, yeah, I wanted you to meet Mark. So I've got his bio here. And so he's been coaching individuals and teams for 20 years. And he works as a consultant, right? I've got that right?
Yes.
And so he holds several positions, including Director of Mental Performance for Blue Chip Player Development and for the United States Tennis Association Player Development and Team USA departments, which is pretty impressive. And his goal is to help people achieve their full potential. Of course, we're all pretty excited to do that. And he's done that across all spectrums, including small business owners and writers and all kinds of individuals, which is why there's value in your meeting him. And he's published research and been adopted into several high performance cultures so that he can learn more. So he lives his motto every day, which is striving to get better every day. And certainly participating in a webinar is part of that, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my share there because we're going to have a conversation. And as I say, I'll keep track of Q&A and make sure we do our best to answer any of your questions or comments. So Mark, how did you become a confidence expert? Where did that come from?
That's a good question. So thank you for the introduction. Thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy day to sit with us for a little while. And there's so many of you, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to have dynamic dialogue between all of you. So Mary Jane and I will do our best to try to address this topic of confidence in as complete a manner as we can in 30 minutes, which is pretty tricky. It's a pretty complex topic. We'll try to simplify it. It's one of the things that I try to do is make things really simple and practical. So the question, how do I become a confidence expert? Well, I think I've really spent a lot of time learning how to coach people and help them improve. And along with being an effective performance coach, confidence is a topic that we have to address. So I guess since I don't think anyone on this call knows me, why don't I start at the beginning and give you a quick little overview of how that occurred. So does that sound all right, Mary Jane?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So as Mary Jane mentioned, I've been in the coaching world for 20 years. The last 10 have been at the highest level of sport, working with elite athletes, with Team USA, specifically tennis athletes. I've worked with some others as well and some other realms, but tennis is really where I spend most of my time. And about 10 years ago, I was hired in a part-time position as a strength and conditioning coach for USTA player development at Team USA. And I kind of sat back for a while, just observed, figured out who was who, what the role really was. And it was exciting to be in that environment, working with athletes that I've seen on TV. But I really just kept my mouth shut and observed and learned and took notes, asked lots of questions. And after a few months, I recognized that, at least I believed, that the program could have been improved from an efficiency standpoint, from a productivity standpoint, even from an enjoyment standpoint with the athletes and coaches. So put a proposal together, which got approved, and decided to take the athletes off the court and out of the gym, which was their primary environment most days, and bring them down to one of the conference rooms where I had moved all the furniture out of the way, rolled out a bunch of mats, and started getting into what I called an active recovery day, and really trying to teach some yoga initially, which I was qualified to do. Of course, there was pushback initially. Why do we have to do this? This doesn't make any sense. Anyway, long story short, the athletes started to feel better. Performance increased, stress levels went down. Wins started to come in more frequently. And the coaching philosophy that I work under and that Team USA worked under, and one of the reasons I was hired is because the coaching philosophy is aligned, is development is more important than results. The process, right? Embracing the process, which we've all heard about, but what is that? How do you do that? And to do that, we really needed a philosophy that everybody was bought into, working in the same direction for the same mission. And naturally, once the buy-in started to occur and the athletes realized there was a benefit to this, I then started introducing what I did as an athlete and what I've learned through my continuing education efforts, and started teaching some natural progressions that you would see in any yoga environment. And I started teaching breath work. Then I started teaching visualization skills. And I started teaching focusing skills, refocusing skills, learning how to talk to ourselves in an effective manner, learning how to set goals, and it's just kind of built out this whole program. Little did I know, and this is all being done in New York at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, where the US Open is. If anybody's a tennis fan, you probably have seen the US Open. Maybe you've been. It's an incredible environment. If you haven't been, it's a wonderful environment. It's a lot of fun. It's electric. So little did I know that the site manager was reporting back to the head sports psychologist based in Florida at that point, where many of the professional athletes were training, as they do given the weather conditions. They allow for year-round training for the most part. And he was loving what I was doing. He had a vision actually to do this, because in the world of sports psychology, training young athletes in particular, junior athletes, in the world of mental performance coaching, the world of sports psychology didn't think that could be done, much less, they didn't even believe that the kids could learn these things, much less apply them under the pressure of competition. And turns out that they can.
And that's how you discovered that confidence is a skill?
I wouldn't say discovered it. I kind of had a feeling, and I knew that it was something that develops. And yeah, we built that out. So long story short, I could probably spend a whole hour talking about this. I haven't even thought about it in a very long time, but the memories are coming back in flashes right now.
Sure.
So long story short, I met with that sports psychologist. He said that he had a vision to try to implement this with the youth athletes that were training at that center. And that center was a heavy youth population. And he did not want a PhD in that program. He wanted a teacher, a coach, to do this, because ultimately performance skills, mental performance skills, physical performance skills are skills.
Right.
It's not therapy.
That's great.
And I had the skill set that he really liked for this role, so we formalized the program.
Wonderful. So I'm just going to interrupt you here, Mark, because I see I have a hand up. Terry, you've got your hand up, and I'm wondering, I can allow you to talk, or you could put your question into Q&A, and we'll answer it as quickly as we can, for sure. And I'm wondering, Mark, if this is a good time to launch our polls for people. Because one of our objectives, just so everybody knows today, is to talk about the why, what, and how of confidence. We want to make sure that you walk away with some skills and some knowledge in terms of your own confidence. So I've got two polls, two questions I want to ask everybody. So I'm going to launch the first one, and it relates to what is confidence. So you have 4 options there to give us what your definition is, or what is close to your definition of what confidence is. So I'm watching the timer there, and I'll give you about a minute to put in your choice of what your definition is of confidence, and we'll see where everybody lands. Is it a deep, unshakable belief in your abilities, or an inherent feeling that is undefinable, having trust and reliance on your ability to do your best always? Or is it all of the above? And we'll see where people land. It'll be a fun thing to do. So we'll see. We're almost at everybody has answered. We're getting close. I'll just leave it there a few more seconds and see where we get to. Okay, 96% of you have answered, much appreciated. So I'm going to share the results here. So you can see that 44% have said that their definition is having full trust and reliance on your ability to do your best. But that's closely followed by all of the above. So including an inherent feeling that is undefinable and a deep, unshakable belief in your abilities. So keeping that in mind, we have one more poll here that we're going to share with you. So I'm going to stop sharing that poll, and I'm going to
love the participation in that. That was great.
The next one. Let me see. Here we are. So my next question is, rate your confidence then, based on that definition and what you've been thinking about confidence while we've listened to Mark, and how do you rate your own level of confidence in your work? So whatever your work is. So do you have a low level of confidence in the work you're doing, or is it erratic? Or in the middle, you do your best, but you tend to worry, or you're just, you know that you're always doing your best all the time. Be nice to know where most of us are on that spectrum. So people are answering this one very, very quickly, because I didn't catch them off guard like I did with the first one. So yeah, we'll just leave it a few more seconds and see what the final result is going to be with this one. That's great. I really appreciate your participation here. Okay, that's fantastic. So I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you. And I think they align with what I would say. So very few people have a low level of confidence. 30% say it's erratic. Some days they feel very confident, and some days, yeah, not so much. But the highest there is 46, that you're in the middle, that you do your best, but you tend to worry in the background, right? And then 19% are confident that they're doing their best in their work. And again, whatever your work is. So that's some great information for us. Appreciate that. And that sort of takes us to asking Mark about the how of confidence, right? How do we create a stronger relationship with confidence?
So I think we have to first address that confidence is dynamic. It ebbs and flows, just like results, right? Whatever the results might be, whether we're athletes or we're salespeople trying to meet quotas, variable. So it's normal that confidence would have peaks and valleys. One of the things that we'd like to try to do from a performance standpoint, regardless of what our environment is, whether we're a salesperson, a business owner, an athlete, whoever we might be, whatever we might be doing, we want to try to limit those peaks and valleys and create more of a flow with less extremes.
Okay.
So how do we do that? That's the
Yeah. How do we do that?
question. I wish, Mary Jane, that I can give you this magic formula and everybody can plug it in and be off and running. It's not quite that simple.
I'm sure.
But as I had mentioned earlier, it does involve embracing the process of growing, of improving, of developing.
So in terms of the work that we might be doing, whatever it is, it's not the end result that we want to be 100% focused on. We want to be enjoying the entire process.
If possible, yeah. I mean, there's so many cliches and quotes that address that topic. But yes, that's a part of it. And how do we get there? There's numerous ways. One way is to have very clear understanding of what are you trying to accomplish? What is your big grander vision? I'm thinking of Nike as an example. Right? I think everybody probably is familiar with the brand Nike. Nike has a very simple vision, but wow, it's so grand that it's hard to even wrap your head around. Their vision is to have a Nike product or piece of apparel in every household throughout the entire world.
Wow.
Right?
That's big.
That's not a goal, that's a vision, right? So understanding what the vision is important. Where are we going? But we also have to understand why we're doing what we're doing. So these are the foundational components that need to be in place if we want to then be goal-oriented and work off that ability to be confident in what we're doing. So one, knowing why you're doing something. That why is everything. It's your passion. It's what drives you. It's what wakes you up in the morning. It's what helps you resist hitting snooze when the alarm goes off because you're excited to go attack the day. That why is the purpose. Then from there, what is our vision? Where are we headed? What does our future look like according to our own desire, our own image? Then we set goals. This is really important. Setting efficient goals, right? Most people that do set goals probably set time-based goals. Those are the most common types of goals: short-term, mid-term, long-term. Maybe they go beyond that and have a big goal or a dream goal. Those are always great. And then I always like to start at the end and work backward. Because if we do that, if we know where we're going, if we know what a long-term goal is, for instance, which I define as a year or more, then we can say, okay, let me set a midterm goal, which would be, let's call it 3 months to 12 months. And I'd align that to point me in the direction of a long-term goal. And then the same thing for the short-term goal. And then we break those short-term goals down into really, really digestible and actionable items. And that is how we embrace the process.
So that's related to SMART goals?
Absolutely. I think many people that either paid attention in health class in school or have learned something in business are probably familiar with SMART goals. Yes.
So Penny has put in Q&A, and it's appropriate to bring it up here, Penny, so thank you. I know I am very good at what I do because I measure my results.
I love that.
Right? My success rate ranges from 92 to 98%. I work very hard to achieve these results, which also points to something you like to share with people about confidence.
Absolutely, which is effort. Right? It's all about effort. There's a concept, and an author, if you're not familiar, I would highly recommend reading her book, or at least doing a little bit of research on the book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And she talks about a growth mindset compared to a fixed mindset. And her research helped her to define these two different mindsets. Really interesting reading, and it really is all about process and the importance of effort and how effort trumps everything else effort trumps ability. Your abilities will improve as a result of applying your effort, but effort's the most important thing. And if we apply our effort to the participant that just shared that great comment, there's that's evidence of it, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you, because for some reason chat is disabled, and again I apologize for that. So the book is called Mindset, and her first name is
Carol Dweck.
O-D-W-E.
D-W-E-K.
E-K, Dweck. I've heard her name now that you say it again. So Carol Dweck, D-W-E-K. Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great resource to learn how to wrap your head around the process of improving and developing and understanding it from some different perspectives.
And one of the things you shared with me in a conversation we had, which annoyed me, but I realized it was true, is if you're uncomfortable, there's room for improvement.
Definitely. And yeah, you wouldn't be the first one to be annoyed by that. Because nobody wants to be uncomfortable, yet we're all uncomfortable at various times throughout a day, even, for different reasons, right? And one of the things that I like to do in terms of developing confidence is actually taking the opposite approach to that discomfort, but still addressing it. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
And it's the discomfort usually comes from being presented with something, a situation or an environment or a feeling that we don't like because we're probably not good at it. It's a weakness, right? Generally. And nobody wants to admit that we have a weakness, right? That's kind of counterintuitive, but it's really important for the process of development to occur. Just like it's so important to fail. And I like the motto, winning and learning rather than winning and failing.
Okay.
Winning and
So
losing.
can you go back to that? It's so important to fail.
Yes. So most of us think of winning and losing as the ultimate gauge for our success.
Yeah.
But if we switch that and go from winning to learning, right, to me, there really is no failure. The only time there's actually a failure is if we fail to learn from what we just experienced. But then we have to go a step further, right? How many times have you, Mary Jane, been working with a client, and whether the word failure comes up or not, but some other aspect of it comes up, and that sort of overshadows everything, and that's the definable moment. And saying, well, okay, now that we talked about it, I've learned something. I don't agree with that. I think there's been an opportunity presented for learning, but until we take action on that, we haven't learned anything. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And again, it brings us back to that idea that effort is involved in increasing our confidence. So it's one thing to be, I'll use the phrase passive learner, and think that because you've read this book or attended this webinar, that you've taken it in, but you learn it by doing it or practicing it or attempting it.
Absolutely.
But the other thing that really stands out to me in all of that is, I was born in 1958, so sort of still in that post-Second World War atmosphere. And the word failure was very strong in our upbringing to avoid failing at all costs. And to hear this idea that failure is part of learning and failure is also part of growing our confidence is liberating. I'll say it's liberating.
That's awesome. Yeah, so then to come full circle back, the idea of being uncomfortable is really important because we have to experience setbacks, adversity, and disappointments to be able to then have the opportunity to then grow from it. So, but I like to take it from a different perspective. Well, we're certainly going to address weaknesses and try to improve those, but that's part of the deal. I also like to then take a different approach and take more of a positive coaching approach and recognize what are we good at?
Right.
right? Whether it's something that we're naturally good at or we've learned to become good at something because we put the time and effort into practicing it, or just enough experience has helped us to develop a skill or ability. This is really important because once we identify what we're good at, then we can move to becoming great at it, possibly. And that's another way to develop confidence. So we're not only focusing on the things that we're not good at or a weakness, perhaps, but now we're paying attention to, okay, what are we good at? How do we become great at something? And I love this concept because if you really break down truly successful people, we find that they really are become great at one thing for the most part. And as a result of putting their energy and effort into becoming great at this one thing, other things have improved dramatically.
Ah, so, I mean, one of the things that I say to everybody that I work with is practice, practice, practice. But also when I think about other parts of my life, so not necessarily being the phone lady, but being a cook and being a writer, I can certainly say that forcing myself to write a weekly blog for 10 years made me a better writer than I could have ever imagined I'd become, right? So that's really positive. Now I'm going to say, and I know this went by very quickly, that it's 1:26, and I do want to ask you one more important question. I'm going to read a few comments in Q&A for everybody. So it is, it's Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, and it's called Mindset, the New Psychology of Success, for those of you that are looking for that. Paul Mombarquette has agreed with that 1950s post-war do not fail situation. So I think, several people on that call will be familiar with that. And Carl Jackson has said that one of his favorite characteristics of an entrepreneur is that they use mistakes as learning opportunities. So that's for sure. But I wanted to quickly ask you about negative thoughts in our mind. And while Mark answers this, what I'd appreciate is if we could have made this a 2-hour conversation. If any of you would like to learn more from Mark about confidence and have us not repeat this, but create another one, please let us know. Please let us know in Q&A or by an email afterwards. That would be really helpful. So how do we manage the negative words that tell us you can't do this, or you're not doing it well, you should quit, or any of those kind of thoughts?
Yeah, and I can only imagine the participants nodding as you're saying that. I know I certainly was. It's very normal, and that's step one, to recognize that we have an internal dialogue. Talking to yourself is normal. Whether it's out loud or it's in your mind, we all do it. We do it at different times, and it's quite normal. The negative self-talk is also fairly normal. We're conditioned, really, to focus more on the negative than the positive. Just the way society operates and the way our minds actually process information, but it's detrimental to performance, right? Whether you're trying to perform on a field or in an office or on the road. Some of you might be road warriors. That negative dialogue can be very powerful, and to override it's really important, but it takes a lot to override it. Interesting statistic for you here. When we have a negative self-talk or negative comment that we really take to heart, that we embrace in that moment, even if we know it's irrational, but in that moment, for us, that's the reality. It actually takes, and this is an average, 6 to 7 positive comments to get from negative back to neutral.
Wow.
And if that's not enough, Mary Jane, you have to believe those. You can't just fake it. They have to be real. Or like we know posture is a very powerful tool to help influence how we feel and how we think. We can create that. You can fake that, right? You may feel like balling up, but you can still get up tall and make yourself big and powerful, and you'll still get the positive effects of that. But the self-talk doesn't work quite that way. It's really difficult to fake it. It has to be legitimate.
So
So
that's why you need a team, or you need a trusted advisor, that kind of thing.
absolutely. Yeah, working with the team is really important to be able to bounce ideas off of and share successes, share disappointments, express ourselves,
And
and
does
learn how to
journaling come
think more
into that
positive.
as well, do you
I'm
think?
sorry?
Does journaling come into that as well? Is that possible?
It sure does. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All
And
right. I
I mean,
have to cut us off.
again, like you said, we could probably go off
Keep
here for a
going.
couple of
I've got all
hours.
kinds of things to ask you.
There's so many ways to go about that. I'll just make one differentiation if it's okay.
Sure.
There is a difference between a journal and a diary.
Right.
A diary would be a place to put your most intimate feelings, your thoughts, your dreams, your fears, right? And that's great. That's very helpful. A lot of people find a great balance in life doing that. Mental health is a pretty hot topic these days, and it's a way to help manage. But a journal, we're talking about performance here. A journal, if it's specific to your job duties or your environment or your job itself, your performance itself, that can be very powerful, and that can help direct the self-talk. Because if we
Right.
journal in advance of what we're doing, we can prime ourselves to have the vocabulary that we want to choose that's going to be helpful toward the success we're striving for, and gives ourselves a better chance when we do get into that negative dialogue, that we can reframe that experience or that thought back to what was the original plan here.
Okay. So I'm going to share the screen again. And, this slide tells you to put things in chat, which I apologize, it's not working, but put them in Q&A. And I wanted to share, Penny Doherty added, by focusing on striving for excellence rather than perfection allows for personal and professional growth. So I bet you Mark likes that comment a lot.
I
And
love that. I
several
actually have a whole hierarchy built upon that.
Okay, so we've got lots to talk about, and several people have said they'd love to attend another conversation. So we're going to take that away, and Paul is sharing that he works with a great team because they're very positive with each other, and the team lead communicates in a positive manner. So, having somebody have your back, I guess, for lack of a better word, is great. And Sherry Dawson is saying 1 or 2 hours would be great. So we'll certainly take that under an advisement. Thank you. And I'm going to share with you, as a result of being here with us today, we're going to be sending you an email so that you can get this deck, but also a recording of what we accomplished today. And here's a bit of information about how to reach me and how to reach Mark. So you'll have that as part of the deck that you receive, the PDF that you receive. And finally, we managed to put a few thoughts together to take with you, because we wanted to make sure that you had something to take with you from how quickly this went by. A question mark is, do you think the 10,000 hours mantra is misleading?
Actually, that exact thought came to me when you asked me how I became an expert in confidence. Yes and no. I mean, I think it's a great framework because it provides some structure and helps to build the idea that development's going to take time. But I think we're all so unique and as individuals that depending on what we're trying to improve within, that time frame could be anything.
Okay, so that's another, thank you for that, Tony, because that's something really to explore as well. Depending on what your goal is, your time frame could be different, and that should be part of your SMART goal anyway, right? Is the timing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. So we will be following up on this, and Mark and I will get together now that we've experienced doing 30 minutes together, and we'll get back to you about what we're going to do next. We were pretty confident that there would be a next. We just didn't know what it would be, and you've really helped us figure that out, and appreciate that. And we'll stay here if there are additional questions. We'll gladly look at those. That's not a problem. Just put them in chat, or if you put your hand up, I can actually take you off mic if any questions you want to ask in real time of Mark. That would be awesome. I'll certainly put that out to him, and we'll stay until all the questions are answered. Lots of thank yous there from everybody. Thank you, Kelly. She's telling us, Mark, that this is a great partnership. We'll see where that takes us.
Yeah, great.
I just have really enjoyed all my conversations with Mark, and eye-opening for me, because I get a lot of feedback that I have a lot of confidence, and that's true, I do, but not always. So like you in your poll, it's erratic. And again, as I mentioned earlier, really brought up in that failure is wrong atmosphere. So really appreciating what I'm learning. Lots of thank yous there. Looking forward to the next one. No questions at the moment, Mark, but I'm going to keep looking. Some people are.
That was one of the things that motivated me to reach out to you, was as I listened to your interview and read an article that you were highlighted in, I felt like we were essentially doing some very similar, almost the same work. And I was really curious to know how you went about your business. And here we go. We got the conversation, and we're up and running.
We do. And it is practice, practice, practice.
Comes down to repetition.
But I don't know that I have ever ventured into, and as a consequence are very curious about the idea of the thoughts in our mind. Like, I mean, I mention them, but I have no expertise. So you have surprised me today in terms of saying that, you know, you can think a positive thought, but you really have to, you can't fake that positive thought. And I think that I'm going to say that that might be a really good place to start, because often when I'm doing something that I'm not sure I can do, and I've actually just come through 2 days of craziness in terms of people wanting to get stuff done before the end of February. And I was feeling very nervous that I was going to pull it off, and very tired and all kinds of things. And I just kept saying to myself, but I can do this. I can do this. But anyway, so I'm just curious about that. And I think you even put a number on it, that you have to say it and believe it sort of 9 times to get to the middle, to get to neutral.
Yeah, that could actually be a whole nother conversation, because I've been able to differentiate between positive self-talk and effective self-talk.
Ah.
So yeah, I mean,
I'm writing that down.
There's so many different ways to go here, and it's all interrelated. And it speaks even in that first bullet point, right? Developing skills of resilience can also help us become more confident. Resilience is as much a skill as confidence is.
Okay, we got lots to cover. This is fantastic. Now we do have Christine, thank you for your question, and I will answer it. So the short form of what I do, Christine, is I train people how to communicate on the phone. And my client base are companies or individuals who want to talk to their customers. So they want to have relationships with their customers. Sometimes that's a selling relationship, a product or a service. And sometimes that's simply customer service. So that's it's a narrow focus, but I learned long ago that talking on the phone is a skill. And I think Mark picked up on that in my interview, because people don't necessarily view it as a skill, but it is. Yeah, you're welcome, Christine, my pleasure. So positive self-talk and effective self-talk. And then did you say that resilience is something that you practice? Was that what you just said?
Yes, resilience is another skill.
Is a skill.
Just like confidence is both innate character trait as much as a skill. Resilience is also a character trait as well as a skill.
That I never would have said that. So that's I think that's a game changer for me to think of resilience as a skill. Again, I think people that know me well would say that I'm resilient, but I've never, ever thought of it as a skill. I just thought it was genetics or something.
Right. One of the things that I like to do is help people learn how to think how highly successful people think, which is a little different than how the average person thinks. And understanding some of these ideas and concepts is the starting point.
Okay. Well, that's great. We don't have any new questions. I think that everybody would stay on the call for us for the rest of the afternoon, but what we're going to do is we're going to regroup. Mark and I will regroup and talk about this experience and the things that you've shared with us, which I really appreciate. And we will be sending you information on what we're going to do next, because at the moment we don't know, but we will figure that out and let you know. So thanks everybody for being here with us today. Really.
Okay, can I make one more comment?
Yes, of course.
So for anyone who's still on, the
You've got
slide
40
that we have
people
up there,
still on the call, so that's fantastic.
yeah. Oh, I see it at the bottom. Yeah, 25. No, there's 25 questions. 42.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool. So that slide that's up there are just some takeaways. And even though this was more of an introductory kind of get to know you, prompt some thoughts type of a presentation, I always like to leave an experience with some takeaways, things that I can use for improvement. And that's what we're looking at here. So we talked about most of this on there. We didn't talk about breathing at all.
No.
But what you're looking at are some takeaways to help you start to develop confidence as a skill. Start to recognize perhaps when you've experienced some form of adversity and you were able to overcome it, what did you actually do? Or what allowed you to overcome it, and that is the resilience. And if that's something that was intentional, you can build on it. If it was unintentional, let's be aware of it and try to build on it the next time. Setting goals is really important. We talked about that in the beginning of the conversation, and right, it starts with having a bigger vision, a grander vision of knowing what is our future going to look like, or at least the desire of what we think we want it to look like, and then putting a plan in place to actually get there, checking things off one thing at a time, focusing the attention on what's actually in our control when it comes to goal striving in order to achieve the goal that we set. Then the idea that Mary Jane brought up about being comfortable, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, so important. So we have to embrace that. That is a key component to developing confidence and resilience, by the way, at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that, what might be helpful the next time we get together is to just maybe walk through a case study of some sort and point out, well, here's where the confidence wasn't available, here's what they did, whatever. We could probably create some storytelling there that would really enforce some of these concepts. So I'm excited, Mark.
That's a great idea. That would be really interesting to then sort of pinball between experience maybe you had with a client on the business side of things, and I can do it from an athlete's perspective.
Yes.
We can find the crossover points and
Yeah.
make those connections. That would be I think that'd be fun.
Okay. Well, again, thanks everybody for coming. This went by way faster than we thought it would be, and we worked hard to be well organized, and we did our best. You're very welcome, Jerry. Thank you for being here with us. Thanks to everybody for being here with us, and look for us in your inbox. All right.
Thank you.